Jai Hind, dear students. Today I am going to discuss with you the complex topic of Unit 2, that is requirement engineering process. From the very beginning, when we will thought about that we are going to develop any kind of project, requirement engineering, requirements are the major inputs to the development of any kind of a system, any kind of a project, or any kind of a process. So in this lecture I will discuss with you what is requirement engineering, what are the various steps of requirement engineering, and in broadly I will discuss the steps of gathering the requirements. So first of all, we should understand what is requirement. What is a software requirement? That means what actually we need to develop, what we need to design. What is the need of the customer? What is the need of the customer? That the specific definition given by the IEEE standards, that it is a condition or the capability, condition of capability needed by a user to solve a particular problem to achieve a specific objective. Like if we have to develop a ERP system, then we should know what all things has to be included in this ERP system. What is the need of the user? What actually the user wants from the ERP system. So, or I will also define it as a condition or a capability that must met or possessed by a system. That must matched or possessed by a system. That means what all the things that after at the last what the system will deliver to you, or to satisfy a contract. That means if I am going to give something to develop or making, I will say these are my need. Then another person who is standing on the next side, he will understand your needs and design the system according to this. So it is to satisfy a contract or specification or other formally imposed document. So the requirements basically specify the needs of the user, because without the needs, without identifying what actually the user want, one cannot, or one developer cannot able to develop any kind of a system without understanding the needs of the user clearly. Broadly, the requirements are classified as the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements. These functional requirements are the features of the system, what all features you want. That means what the particular system will do, what the particular system will do. So that we have to identify what all the system is going to do. So suppose I am going to develop a system of ERP system, we are saying, so develop the attendance management should be there, proper marks management should be there, proper result management should be there, complete information system of this student. So these are the some features that we should expect from a particular system. Non-functional requirements are the characteristics, or sometimes we will also find there is non-functional requirements as the characteristics what the system must possess, right? Or we will also define the non-functional requirement as the expectation of the user, that definitely the user want that the system which is going to be developed should be efficient enough, should be secure. We cannot say that my system is secure. Security is the expectation that will comes under the category of the non-functional requirement. And the functional requirements will tell you what all the things that, suppose I am going to develop a system like the that will capture the picture, that will capture for attendance monitoring, that will capture the picture. These are the features. The system will capture the picture, will process in a high modulation mode. So these are the some specific features which will be defined in a function. What all the functions will system will do. that will comes under the category of the functional requirement, and how these functions will be done, how beautifully that will be done, right? These are the some characteristics that will comes under the category of the non-functional requirements. So, after identifying ki these were my functional requirement, these are the non-functional requirements, we have to engineer all these requirements. So, requirement engineering is the discipline of application of the proven principles. That means which has been decided earlier by some researchers or by some standards, that which kind of methodology has to be used for engineering the requirements, like what kind of the principles, methods, tools, or the notations. Some notations has to be used, how we have to represent our requirement so that the user can easily understand. To describe a proposed system, its intended behavior and its associated constraints also. So, it will also focus on its behavior and its some constraint also. It is a process of finding out, analyzing, documenting and checking these services and constraints called the requirement engineering. So, requirement engineering produces one large document, okay, written in a natural language, contains a description of the what system will do without specifying how it will do, right? So, after doing the requirement engineering, one document will be created that will be written in a simple language, and it is specifying the what system will do, what are the functional requirement, what are the non-functional requirement, what are the specific requirement, what are the system requirement. All these things will be specified into a document, and without specifying how these requirements will be met. So, this document will be known as the SRS, that is Software Requirement Specification. SRS, we called it as a Software Requirement Specification, and this document will work as a contract between the developer and the customer. That means all things will be written, all the requirements will be in a written form. Everyone can refer, the user can refer the document and the developer as well. Input, whatever the input we are giving to the requirement engineering is the problem statement and prepared by the customer, right? And the output will be your SRS. So, while we are doing the requirement engineering, if I am doing a requirement engineering, say this is my requirement engineering process, what input this requirement engineering is needing? The problem statement. What is the problem, right? The problem statement, right? This is the input. But after doing the requirement engineering, doing several steps, we will prepare a document. That document is known as the SRS. So, this is the SRS is the output. So, the requirement themselves are descriptions of the system services, constraints that are generated during the requirement engineering process. Here is the requirement engineering process, and this process will be used very widely depending on the application domain, and the application domain, the pupils who are involved and the organization developing the requirement. So, here are the number of some activities that will be common to all the process that will be done during while doing the requirement engineering process. First one is elicitation, requirement elicitation, or I will call it as a gathering. You have to gather the requirement from the user, from the customer. There are some cases where the user and the customers are different. Say, let us take an example of any kind of a shopping website where the customer is different stakeholder, but the user is different. So, we have to gather the information, we have to gather the requirements from all the stakeholders. But in some situation, user and the stakeholders are, user and the customer are the same. But in some application, the user and the stakeholders are different. Then the next step is we have to analyze the requirements, right? We have to analyze all these requirements. For analyzing, we will use some different some tools other. Then we have to focus on the requirements documentation. What we have gathered, what we have analyzed, now the time comes to document all that, and we will document that thing into a SRS. After that, we will go for the review. We will go for the each and every review by doing some audit. If there some changes are required, we will review that again and complete the process. So in this lecture today, I am going to mainly focus on the various activities, various methodologies which we will be focusing on the requirement elicitation. These are the steps which will be used for the requirement engineering process. Here it has been given the problem statement or the feasibility, which will be the input to the requirement engineering. We have to identify, first of all, we should know for what we have to do the requirement engineering, right? We should know now for what we are doing. So that is your problem statement, that is your input to the requirement engineering. Then under this process, these several steps will be done. First step, this is step number 1, that is requirement elicitation. Under this elicitation, we will use several tools for gathering the requirements. Then we will go for the analysis. For analysis, again we will use some tools or some methods for analyzing the requirements, and it will this step will help us to identify whether some of the requirements are duplicated, or we can remove them, we can merge some requirements, or whether all the requirements are properly categorized. Then we will document them in a SRS form, and that SRS will be using the same standard, that is your IEEE standard. Finally, we will review the requirements. After final reviewing all the requirements, we will produce the document to the user, and we will get this final output as a SRS, right? We will get the output as a SRS. While documenting, we should document the steps and all these things, ki what all the required, ki kya kya meri all requirements rahi hain, what all the things we need, ki what all the tools we should use, that we will document it. And finally, after documenting, we will make it in a form of a IEEE recommended standard for the SRS. So let us start with the beginning, ki how the problem statement and feasibility study will be done. So this is the activity which will involve the analysis of the problem and the collection of the relevant data or information relating to that particular product or your project. If someone says that I have to develop a e-voting system, right? I don't want to go for some other place for voting, cast my vote in another city. I want to vote it into only my city in which I am residing currently. So for this, what we have to analyze, whether this practically possible, is it what kind of data will be required for performing this kind of activity, right? So all these things will come under what we have to clearly identify what is the problem statement, and how we will identify, and we will see whether it is technically, financially, or socially it is feasible. So the main aim of the feasible study is to determine whether it would be financially, technically feasible to develop a product. The collected data items are analyzed to arrive at the following. First of all, what we will do, we will find out the abstract problem definition, that like the aim, what we are going to do, what the user want, in some few words, like the definition, what is the problem. Like the problem is that some of the pupils are residing in some of the other state where they don't have their vote, right? They don't have right to vote in that city because they have a voting right into the another city, right? So they also want to vote during the long distance. They won't be able to go to their place and cast the vote. Some kind of a system has to be evolved like that, that the person either residing in another city, in another state, can cast the vote on the date of voting of their constituency on the same day, sitting in a same city. This is a simple definition. Now we will formulate some proposed solution. What all the solution we can give. Then analysis of these solution strategies to compare their benefits and some constraints. What are the benefits and what are their some shortcomings. In a CRISPR, we can define the feasibility study is the analysis of the potential impact of that project or a particular program or a particular product. We mainly focus the feasibility studies. The focus of feasibility studies, what we have to do, whether this concept is viable. If I am saying if I am asking we have to develop a system like casting a vote in our city, we don't have to go into the another city in our constituency. So is it really possible? It is how technically or how securely, how it is possible or not. Will it be possible to develop a product that matches the project's vision or statement? Is it possible to develop a product? Is it possible to develop a project that will meet the project vision? What are the current estimate cost? This is very important to identify what is the estimated cost and schedule for the project. It should be identified. Is it financially possible, whether it is feasible to develop this kind of solution for to develop this kind of solution for this problem in a estimated cost or not. So all these answers will be given by doing the feasibility study. There are the several broad 5 factors are there in which we will divide the feasibility study factors, that we called it as a TALOS. T stands for the technical, E stands for economic, L stands for legal, O stands for operational, and S stands for the schedule. T is saying that the technically feasibility, we have to see, is it technically feasible to implement the new one? Whether if I am saying we have to use some new technology to make this system more feasible, more secure, is it technically possible? Economic, are the project cost assumption that we have already identified the cost. So either it is whatever the assumptions we have made about the cost, are they realistic? Is it possible to follow the legal standards for the legal feasibility? Operational feasibility, does the business model is realistic? Operations, that what kind of operation, what kind of functions you are doing. So whatever the business model we are preparing, is it realistic? Then the schedule, whatever the timelines, whatever the durations we have given, are the project schedules assumptions are realistic? Whatever that I have identified, no, I will prepare this kind of a project in a 6 month. Is it realistic assumption or not? What we have, or we have assumed randomly, or we have analyzed that these kind of projects should be developed in a 6 month or a 8 month or a 10 months. So these are the factors which will affect, which while doing the feasibility study, we should look into these 5 factors surely. Now coming to the first step of the requirement engineering, that is the elicitation. So while elicitation, I have told you earlier, elicitation means the gathering of requirements. Gathering of requirements. Here, the requirements are identified with the help of the customer and the existing system processes if they are available. So it may be possible that either we are developing a new system or we are evaluating, or we are making or re-maintaining your existing system. So we have to take the help of the customer, right? Or we have to look into the existing system or the some existing processes. This requirement engineering is also known as the requirement discovery also, and it is the, we will say, it is the most crucial step of all the things that we are doing while developing a project. It is most difficult perhaps, and it is most critical, most error prone also. If any kind of a single wrongly identified error, identified requirement here, it will affect the whole development process. So while analyzing, while identifying the requirements, we have to be very specific. We have to be very clear in the beginning only. The most common intensive aspect of the software development. It is most intensive aspect, very sensitive aspect of the complete software development life cycle. It is not only that the pupil, like the customer and the developer or the team or the managerial pupils will be involved here. The pupil, like it will involve the technical staff working with the customers to find out about the application domain, right? And the services the system should provide and the system operational constraints. So we will involve all the technical staff. That's a customer will have their technical staff, and that technical staff which have the specific knowledge of that particular domain should be involved here. We may also involve the end users, managers, engineers, and the pupils involved in maintenance, and some domain experts, trade unions, etc. So all these we will call all them as a stakeholders. Stakeholders who are directly related to your system, right? Who are directly related to the project, who are directly using that system, or the pupil who will be affected by that particular system. Here is the representation of the requirement elicitation process has been given here. What we should do, it's a process of to and fro, right? We cannot say in a one go I will complete the all process. We will complete one particular step. Here it will begin with the background knowledge. When we should have a background knowledge, we should go for the gathering, right? Background knowledge, and again we will go for the gathering. Then for gathering, we will first of all classify the requirement. We should classify the requirement, gather the requirement, classify the requirement, gather the requirements again. Then if there are any kind of a conflicts, we will resolve those conflicts and we will prioritize the requirement. The priority of the requirements will be there. We will check we will check the requirements. If we will have the background knowledge, then only the requirement check will be done. Then finalizing the requirements. Now these are the requirements after doing this complete process, and finally we document all these requirements. Let us understand all these steps in detail also. Background knowledge, that means the analyst must understand the background and the domain knowledge, right? If we are taking an example, simple example, if the system is developed for a particular ATM, that means the developer must have the basic knowledge how the ATM should work. Or I will say, if a particular system for the result management has to be done for a particular university, the developer should understand how the result processing have to be done, what all the pupils who are involved while the result processing has to be done. Gathering the requirement. This is the activity of discovering the requirements by involving with the stakeholders and the users, right? Gathering activity, that we are collecting or discovering the requirements by any type of the stakeholders. Then we are doing the classification. We are organizing the requirements gathered from the different sources. Now this kind of requirement will be gathered from source 1, from the source 2, and we will organize them properly. Then after classification, we will identify if there are any the requirements conflict, right? This activity involves with the stakeholders and the engineer. It is used to solve the problems in the requirement. They may contradict the business rules. कुछ ऐसा इस तरीके की रिक्वायरमेंट आ रही है जो हमारे बिजनेस रूल्स के अकॉर्डिंग नहीं है. We will try to resolve these kind of problems. Then we will prioritize the requirements. Here, discovering the important requirements by interacting with the stakeholders and organize them into the priority order. Which requirement has to be done first, right? Which requirement has to be completed first. Then finally we go for the requirement check, where the person who is or the authority who is doing the requirement check should have the background knowledge, and this activity involves the checking the stakeholders expectation on the system with the gathered requirement. Whatever we have gathered, it should be checked whether these requirements are meeting the stakeholders expectations or not. Now comes with the some of the methods that we will use for the elicitation. These are the 5 methods that we will use for the elicitation purpose. Methods, or sometimes these will be known as the tools used for the requirement elicitation. It is very important question from exam point of view also. Interviews, brainstorming sessions, fast QFD, and finally the use case diagram, right? This use case, this is a UML diagram. With this we can also clearly identify the requirement. So these are the some methods that we will implement. On for gathering the requirements. Let us go to them one by one. First is interview. By the name it will be very much clear. After receiving the problem statement from the customer, what we have to do, we have to arrange a meeting with the customer, right? It's a informal, it should be done in a very informal way. So during the meeting, or I will say the interview, the both parties would like to understand each other, right? The developing team or the managers or the organization which is developing the project should understand the customer requirement. Customer should also understand the rules or the guidelines or the some business practices of that particular organization. The objective of conducting an interview is to understand the majorly what we are focusing here. What is the customer's expectation? What was the expectation, right? Expectation is that, like if a person want to develop like we will take the example of that e-voting system. What are the expectation of an organization, of a customer? Is that the person don't want to move to the another city, want to save the time and want to vote in the same city in which he or she is residing. This was the expectation. We have to clearly understand that after developing or making a particular project or a software, what actually the user want. That has to be understood during this interview process. Definitely the both parties have the same goal. What the same goal? The goal is the success of the project. Definitely the customer is also having the same goal and the developing team also having the same goal. We will have the some stakeholders which we will involve in our interviews, like some entry level personnel who are doing the entry work, some middle level stakeholder, managers and the users who are directly using that particular software. Some pupils are doing some entry, some middle level, some admin level pupils are there, some managers are there and the users who will be using. So these interviews should be done with these the pupils who are involved like this, and it should be open-ended and properly structured. What all the kinds of question we should ask? Here I have taken one example of the result management system, right? For result management system of a particular university. So what all kind of question we should discuss in a interviews. Like, first of all, any problems with the existing system. What the current existing system is going on, what kind of problem is there? Is there any calculation error? What are the reasons for the malfunctioning or some kind, what are the issues? And majorly we should know how much number of students are enrolled. Possible benefit. What are the possible benefit of making this particular result management system? Definitely getting the results, the students can directly view the result, don't have to board anything or don't have to board a particular location, they can view it from anywhere. Whether the satisfied current policies, how are you maintaining the records of the previous students? Definitely it is also important ki all those students who have passed out from this university, how the record has to be maintained here. Any requirement of data from other system, is there any from other system we need some kind of a specific data? What are any specific problems, any additional functionality you also want with this result processing system? Most important goal of this proposed development. So at the end, we may have a wide variety of the expectations. What all the user expectation, that means we should have what all the user want, what all the non-functional requirements user actually expecting from this particular software. Second step is the brainstorming session. It is also a group session. It is also a group technique in which in this discussion it is not only the solutions will be proposed by the developing team only. It is a group discussion. Some new ideas and creative thinking will be done, and this will be involving the both parties again. We will prepare a long list of the requirements. Firstly, we will categorize, prioritize and prove. The idea is to generate the views, not to vet them. We will generate and we will connect some ideas and we will combinedly make a good solution. Groups again, how the groups will be formed. The group will be involving the users, middle level manager should be involved, and all the stakeholders. What all the stakeholders who are directly using that system, all these will be involved in a group. One facilitator will be there who may handle the group bias conflicts carefully. One facilitator is there. Our facilitator may be some neutral person, not from customer side, not from the development side. Facilitator may follow a published agenda, whatever the agenda is there. Every idea will be documented in a way that everyone can see it, and a detailed report will be prepared for it. Another process of doing the elicitation is using the FAST, that is facilitated application specification technique. It is quite similar to the brainstorming session. It is again a team oriented approach, creation of joint team of the customers and the developers. Then we should arrange a meeting at a neutral site, establish the rules of the participation. We should appoint some facilitator, prepare definition mechanism, doing some worksheets, wall sticker. Participants should not criticize or debate. So here we should have the things that we will come here, that with the requirement elicitation, that we should know what all the fast session preparation is there, the activities. We should all the pupil will participate, will discuss, will prepare their own list and validate all these things. Some kind of it may be not required. We will develop the large level specification. We will develop the mini specification with the sub teams also. Another method is of the QFD. QFD, that is quality function deployment. Quality function deployment, that means we have a focus on the non-functional things, right? We have a more focus. We will capture the technical requirements, document them, but the prime concern is the satisfaction. The prime concern is the satisfaction. We will divide the requirements into the 3 roles: normal, expectation and the exciting. How we will discuss them? The normal, the things like normal requirement for a result management system may be the entry of the marks. That will be no. This is the basic requirement that the entry of the marks should be done and the calculation of the result should be done. But expected is that the protection from the unauthorized access, right? This is the expected. We should not, the user should not say from its mouth that the protection should be given, but it is expected. Then some exciting requirement is also there, like when an authorized access is detected, it should back up and shut down all the process. It is some exciting that we are giving some extra feature, what all the user expect, and we are adding some extra feature to this. Then these are the some major steps that we will involve in it, like identify the stakeholders, then list out the requirements from the customer. We will indicating the degree of importance at the, and we will prepare the final list of the requirement, and it will be categorized: possible to achieve, deferred and reason, and the impossible to achieve and should be drop off. Then we will come to the very important another last tool, that will be your use case approach. This use case approach is going to ask you to divide the requirements into the functional view. Use case will going to give you the functional view. We will create some kind of proper functioning things that we will be involving in a particular system, right? So use case can be defined like this. We can define different use case scenarios or the use case diagram, and these terms will be used often interchangeably. What does the term actually use case means? It is initiated by the user with a particular goal in mind and completes successfully when the goal is satisfied. The components of use case are actor, like some actor, that the person who is directly involved. These are the use case diagrams notations. Actor will be denoted like this, use case will be like this, and the relationship between the use case will be denoted by the arrow. We can also use some of here is the template that we will use for the use case. First of all, what we have to give? We have to give the introduction, what all is about this, then the list of the actors who are the agents involved in it, some precondition, that will be whatever the condition that will be required to satisfy that particular use case to perform. Then we will move to the post condition, the state after the processing, how the state will be changed. Then we will use some flow events also. There are some, what is the basic flow, what are the alternative flow, and we will present the use case relationships. Look at this diagram for the same result management system, and this result management system will be having data entry operator. These are the actors, okay, all these are the actors, and these are the use case, like maintain students detail, maintain subject detail, maintain result details. Here your administrator or the deputy registrar will be using the login, and the data entry operator is also using the login, right? Generating the reports, view the result will be used by the two agents, like student, teacher or the administrator. So how this we can design this? All these things are giving you the functional view of a system. We have detailed design ki what all the things we are doing into this, what we are doing in a maintain student detail, maintain subject detail, result, login, generate report and the view result. So today we have seen various tools for doing the requirement engineering process. We have seen the steps, then we have discussed about what all the 5 tools that we will use for the purpose of the requirement gathering. Thank you.